Tēnā tātou katoa tātou e rau I ka mai nei, ki tēnei wāhanga. Nō reira nau mai piki mai haere mai e rua ngā rata I tēnei wā ko Dr. Lily Fraser, me Anthony Jordan. So I'll just give a little bit of a paku wā for them to introduce themselves quickly. Dr. Fraser. Lily.
Kia ora koutou. Ai, ko Lily Fraser hau, he uri ahau no Kaitahu. He tākuta ahau e mahi ana ki Turiki Healthcare. Kia ora koutou, I'm a GP at Turiki Healthcare in Māngere.
And we have unmasked this afternoon Dr. Anthony Jordan. Anthony, welcome. Ko wai koe, no hea koe.
Kia ora whānau, ko Anthony tēnei, ko Ngāti Waitīiwi. I'm a clinical immunologist, which is a doctor that specialises in the immune system. And at the moment, I am the clinical director for the vaccination program for Tamaki Makaurau.
Tēnā kōrua. Ko Pauline Hopa hau, I'm coming to you from Whāngarei, engari he uri au o Ngāti Whātua o Rākei, e mihi ana kia kōrua. Now, we've prepared some questions, ngā pātai, for you to answer and to bring some understanding of the situation that we find ourselves in with COVID and now the advent of Omicron. So I'm going to go through these questions and ask them, and then as you feel able, please answer these questions. I know there's lots of interest from our whānau here and abroad. So let's crack into it. These questions have been gathered from our whānau throughout the motu, and are really questions that are pressing on their minds at the moment. Now, this is one that I really want to know about. Can you get COVID and Omicron, I know Omicron or Delta, more than once?
Yeah, sadly you can. And that's the horrible part of it is we've seen from overseas, there are now some people that got the original strain of COVID, then they got Delta, and now they've had Omicron. So this belief that once you've had COVID that you've got high level protection isn't, it's not a foolproof strategy. That's why we advocate for people getting vaccinated, even people who have had COVID in the past, to make sure their immune system can fight off the potential of getting infected again and any long-term side effects as well.
Perhaps we should have told that to Novak Djokovic, because I think that's what he was holding on to. And to be honest, I really thought that if you got it once, you were all good. That means you had the immunity, but not. So
I actually had Delta last year in November, and so kind of feel like I've had my little 3 months of, there was only Delta around, and I felt quite comfortable I wasn't going to get it again, and then just as that's wearing off, up pops Omicron. So, I'm prepared that I've had my booster now to get my immunity back up as strong as I can, so that hopefully I don't get it and I don't have to, isolate, and I could just keep doing the mahi. But fingers crossed.
Yes, and you heard it here, whānau, you can get it, fortunately, more than once. So our next question, what are the stats of negative effects of the vaccine on tamariki, especially in terms of their manawa? And this has come to us via Instagram from one of our whānau members, and with the ability now for 5 to 11-year-olds, it's a real pressing question. So we might go to you first, Lily.
Kia ora. Well, I don't want to lead off with the negative, so I might leave the stats to Anthony because that's his thing. But I think that, we've really just started this kaupapa for our tamariki. And as a mama myself, I have a 9-year-old daughter. We actually had COVID last year. And so I've always said to my daughter, when the tamariki vaccine comes out, you're going to get it. And the reason that we want to do it is around protecting you and protecting our whole whānau, allowing you to go back to kura. So she had hers in the first week when it came out. It went really well. So the side effect that she got was just the sore arm. And I think that's probably the most common thing that tamariki and our adults will experience. She didn't have anything else, but there can be other things that show that your immune system is doing its job. So that might be feeling a bit achy or tired, maybe a headache, maybe a low fever, maybe a gland up in your armpit or around that area that shows that your immune system is doing its thing. Those things are pretty common, and that's the main thing that our tamariki will experience. The more serious concern about your manawa or your heart is very, very rare. And so, we still want whānau to be aware of it. And so if your tamaiti is saying that they're getting chest pain or flutters or having hard breathing, anything like that, it's really important that you bring them in to see their GP immediately, that same day, and tell them that they've had the vaccine and that you would like to get their heart checked. So I think it's always good to be on the safe side of these things, but it's really, really rare. So I'll hand over to Anthony and see if he wants to add anything to that.
Thank you.
No, I completely agree. It is really rare. When we look at different groups, like young men aged 16 to 35, they were the group that had problems with inflammation of the heart or the lining around the heart. When we look at the 5 to 11-year-old group, after giving over 9 million doses now, it's even rarer than what we saw in other groups. So we're pretty confident that there's no increased rates of inflammation of the heart in 5 to 11-year-olds. But as Lily said, that doesn't actually change our approach. If any of our tamariki notice that they've got pains in the chest or trouble breathing, bring them along, get them checked out. It's more than likely going to make everyone more reassured that we check for these things rather than just dismissing the possibility of it. And that's how we want to approach all side effects, is know what they are and know what to do.
Kia matara whānau mā, be aware, and if any of that, if in doubt, your GP is your first port of call. I think that's really good advice from the both of you. So our next question. Now, how can you tell if you've got COVID or whether it's or not? Is it, when do you know if it's the flu or a sore throat that you might have got from talking, or like us singing or doing kabaka? What's the difference and how can I tell?
Yeah, so the main thing really is testing. So it can be really hard to know what's causing your symptoms. And the symptoms for COVID are the same symptoms that we can get from other viral illnesses, ranging from a cold through to a flu. And sometimes that can include like tummy symptoms like diarrhea or vomiting. So what we encourage people to do at this stage is get a test done. And so if you're very sick, talk to your GP. If you're not too sick, you can go through the drive-through swabbing and get a swab done. That will change over Omicron. And so the message around whether you get tested and how you get tested, because there's going to be, we're expecting to see thousands of cases per day, that will change over this. So it's just really keeping up to date with what the message is around how you've got it at the time.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yeah, I think it's really important to just remind ourselves, once upon a time, we didn't used to put swabs up people's noses to know what virus they had. We just said, hey, based on the symptoms that you have, what we know is going around at the moment, is it flu season? At the moment, it's COVID season. That's what's going around at the moment. So based on the symptoms that people have, we would say, hey, this looks like you've got COVID. What we know is going around is COVID at the moment. So that's how we make a diagnosis. One of the really important things, and I think, Lily and I have talked about this and other GPs have talked about it, is to not forget about the other things in the background that we could miss. So that's our job as doctors, is to make sure we don't miss the sore throat that could turn into rheumatic fever. So yes, it's COVID season, but that's what we're here to do. We're to say, this could be COVID, but hey, actually, what if it's something else?
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Don't forget the other ailments that we find us happening to ourselves, even though we're in a COVID season. Do you always get the symptoms? What if I have can I actually have no symptoms and still test positive for COVID?
Yeah, so that is definitely something, and we call that asymptomatic COVID. So you've got COVID, but you don't feel unwell, and maybe as part of going to work, traveling, you get a test, and all of a sudden, oh, you've got COVID, and you're carrying COVID, and that does happen. So it's something to be aware of, but it's probably not the most common thing. Most people who get COVID get some symptoms. And what we tend to find is if we leave it a little bit longer, people get symptoms. So it may be that we tested them and then 2 days later, oh, now they're starting to feel ill.
Thank you. You know, when we do get COVID and we're looking at the forecasting that it could well be whole households, what do we do and how do we manage COVID when the whole whānau is sick? What are some of the things that we can be doing, you know, because we're isolating? How can we as a whānau, you know, cope with everyone being māwiwi?
Yeah. So we're really lucky, I think, that we are often the last country to get the new wave.
Yes.
And we've managed in the past to not have big waves. So I think we've got this really important opportunity right now to see what's happening in Australia, to see what's happening in other countries, and go, right, these are what the symptoms look like. Okay, so you might get a sore throat. If you get a sore throat, what kind of things do you like for a sore throat? Okay, if you like lemon and honey, make sure you've got lemon and honey in the cupboard now. Okay. If you like kawakawa, make sure you've got your kawakawa ready now. If you like Panadol, you know, have it all ready so that you're prepared. And that also applies to having kai. And so for some whānau, that is going to be really easy, right? We stock up on kai now and we buy extra. For other whānau, that's not going to be an option, right? It's hard enough to buy this week's kai, let alone think about next week's kai. And so for whānau who are going to not be able to leave the house, you can't go and buy your kai on payday, then there will be support available for whānau who are isolating at home to be able to get the things that they need. And so at the moment, that's really easy to access, right? Every whānau that gets COVID gets this really, I think, great service. And I know that Ngāti Whātua are involved with that in terms of support with kai, support with getting your medicine, getting the pet food, getting whatever else needs to be happen. As our numbers climb, that's going to be a lot harder. And so we're really encouraging whānau that if you haven't got the call up to say, hey, how you doing? Please reach out. You know, ring your local GP, ring your local whānau order provider, ring MSD. There will be lots of information out there about who you contact to get the support you need, because we don't want anybody going without when they're isolating at home, because we know that if you can't get what you need, you'll just walk out the door and go and get it with your COVID. So it's going to be quite a different way of supporting whānau. And so I think the important message is please reach out if you actually need it and you haven't been offered it.
I know we're very blessed with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei and their support for all our whānau. And so that's really great. But I think too, we as whānau can perhaps, if we've got a bit extra, put some away or kohi for others who might not. So I'm a nana and a great nana, and I've started to get together some bits and pieces that I know I'll be able to share or toha out to my mokopuna and to my mokomoko to make sure that they're taken care of. So yeah. How about you, Anthony? What's your advice for when the whole whānau is sick?
Yeah, it's really, as Lily said, just making a plan about how you're going to keep safe at home. So for some of us, that is also, have I got enough of my regular medications to get me through that period? For me, I don't have children, but I've got a dog. So if something happened, who would take care of my dog? So just thinking about all of those things. And I think we need to think about, you know, who would I want to let know that I'm self-isolating at home, so that if I did need anything, I could call people and they knew they were my support person. So for you, Pauline, your whānau know that you sounds like you're saving up for them and you've got things for them. I need to find my version of Pauline in my life. I'll maybe make Lily do it. But, just having a person there to be your support person, and they know they are. And often that's making sure that we would do the same for them if it was the same, they were in the same situation. So those are the sorts of plans that people should sort of anticipate they may need.